If you've seen a lot of my videos, it's definitely possible you are at least somewhat familiar with what we'll call a theory from Thomas C. Foster. He wrote a book called How to Read Literature Like a Professor, genuinely a great read, and in it he said that we think there are infinite stories out there, but they are all actually iterations of a much larger but singular human story. Those iterations give and take texture and depth, and that is what makes literature so interesting, the interactions between essentially everything ever on the page. One iteration I find especially useful in terms of analysis is Prospero's story in The Tempest, because it's also a take on the significance of literature. In the play, Prospero, the Duke of Milan, is set out to sea as part of a coup and finds himself on a deserted island. When the perpetrators of the coup wind up on his island, Prospero uses his magic to get revenge, but the play does not end with him back in his former position or home, because his story has a greater purpose, a commentary on literature. He asks the audience to bring him back to Milan in their minds rather than getting there simply on the page. Literature takes place in the present tense. Anyone can be reading any page at any time, so you can't forget the humanity in every moment. And there's also the stipulation of, if people truly care about it, they themselves achieve what is right. It's an interaction. It's its own part of the exchange of texture and depth that unites wills you may have thought would remain completely separate. I bring up Prospero not because his story is the most apparent allusion in the songs I want to discuss today, but I think those allusions and even just their echoes, if not intentional references, continue to serve his importance in media and art as a whole. Certainly, Glassy by Joe Yuri is primarily a take on the Cinderella story and a different understanding of the glass slipper's role. In this, the slipper is a symbol of the assumption of responsibility for the life one desires. However, similarly, Prospero entrusts audiences with whatever might become of him. Magic and fate can actually follow you rather than the other way around with each literal or figurative step you take. The Cinderella allusions are channels to express melodrama, as well as figuratively pairing foundations like one's feet and the journey they're on with themselves to attribute to them their proper weight. In the end, they want to go beyond, and literature might be framed like life, but life is also often framed like literature. And the title refers to the material of the shoe, as does the speaker directly before each chorus, like it's a person. Prospero in his most famous speech references what he calls baseless fabric, and I think it's entirely possible this material is actually important because it, and naturally the subject they simultaneously call into question, could be essentially interchangeable with others like them. Baseless fabric can mean glass or glassy. Prospero's initiative might fall on you or me or anyone like us, and they still remain significant in their individualism, each their own opportunity for texture and depth. It also goes beyond the Cinderella story, the physical frame like the unconscious, similarly out of touch with normal reality like Prospero's physically beating mind. The bridge portrays the passage of time, but it's lucid and absurd in the same way many absurdist stories reject such rules. Like I said, literature is always occurring, all of it. There's also the commonality in referencing air while describing how the given circumstances are not the end, and there's a motif in the form of eyes described as pouring throughout life. It feels like a potential allusion to another Shakespearean play, Macbeth, as the eyes pour. They are not birthed or born, much the same as Macduff, giving them a sort of power others might lack. Literature creates non-literal eyes, and what is literally in sight only matters so much as steps are inevitably taken, otherness be damned. Top or Cliff by Kim Seang is a whole other story. Literally, I think it's an allusion to Sisyphus. Sisyphus, for those who are unaware, is a human criminal from Greek mythology whose punishment for his crimes is to roll a boulder up a hill for the rest of time in the underworld. When he gets to the top, it just rolls back down again, and he has to start all over. The speaker conveys the dilemma of being alone atop this cliff, where Sisyphus would normally watch the boulder roll all the way back down, and they're asking, is this the top? Did they reach the top? Is that how they should frame it within their mind? Or is it just a cliff? Do they have nowhere to go but down, even with the ability to not chase a boulder back down? And they're unhappy, even if they could think like they reached the top. In my eyes, they are unhappy with Shakespeare, taking on a Prospero-like perspective. They doubt Shakespeare's intentions and abilities because they want him to save the little man who could be Prospero, whereas they feel abandoned by the person the apostrophe addresses, Shakespeare or not. Shakespeare could easily bring Prospero home himself, but he does not make that effort, leaving him in limbo, which the speaker finds incredibly stupid. They reiterate their analysis in the third verse, embedding everything in the world of literature as they call the subject easy to read. As a character, they have an identity they express in the fourth verse. someone who has been torn and shattered, and the subject does not have the same troubles, and we really don't know much about Shakespeare's actual identity. There are lots of conspiracy theories about it, which we even discussed when I was in AP Lit. On the other hand, they are the right person who deserves to live to their full potential rather than being stuck, like I said, in limbo. I think layering these illusions is how we create a complex story out of humanity, which seems to be the crux of all of our shared experiences. It's like we can crack the code if we just do everything we can, which isn't possible, but it's human to fail and still take up opportunities others might dash. I could be completely wrong, and that's okay with me. I like attributing more layering and encouraging others to do the same, and creating something that would not exist without human interaction is as simple as that. I'm in your head. Please leave a comment because it helps my self-esteem.